Have you ever stopped to think about how many of the biggest companies, the ones you interact with every day, aren't quite what they seem? We often picture this single giant company doing everything, but the reality, well, it's often way more intricate and honestly pretty surprising. Today, we're doing a deep dive into what are called complex business structures. You might hear terms like virtual organizations or hollow organizations, maybe network organizations. We're going to pull back the curtain on why businesses are increasingly set up this way and what it really means for how they operate, how they actually manage performance. Our source material for this gives a really fascinating look, almost like getting a backstage pass to how modern business actually works.
Exactly. And our mission really is to pull out the key insights for you, understand the sometimes surprising facts, and get to the heart of how all these seemingly separate parts actually work together. You'll get a kind of shortcut to understanding these hidden structures in the business world. And the core challenge we'll really unpack today, the big one, is how do you control something you don't technically own?
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. Why are businesses leaning so much more on external partners for, really critical stuff like outsourcing and collaboration? Our sources suggest, two main drivers. First, these partners can often do things better or maybe just more cost effectively. And second, it means the main company avoids having to sink huge amounts of money into, say, expensive factories or equipment.
That's spot on. And this shift, it's so fundamental. It's actually spawned these new terms you mentioned. When we talk about these complex setups, we use labels like virtual, hollow, network. It really is a rethinking of what a company even is.
Right. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. You said rethinking. Give me an example, something really eye-opening that shows how these structures work in the real world. What's something that might genuinely surprise people about how companies are put together now?
Okay, well, let's take the idea of an imaginary or hollow organization. Our source talks about GANT, the Swedish clothes retailer.
Yep.
You know GANT, right? Popular brand.
Yeah, sure.
You'd probably imagine this huge operation, factories, warehouses, the works. But get this, the source says its core operations are run by a company called Pyramid Sportswear AB, and they have only 8 employees.
8 employees for GANT. That's
Wow. How does that even work? What do those 8 people do?
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Pyramid Sportswear, they own the brand rights, they pick the designers, they do the quality control, sort out the advertising, arrange shipping from factories to retailers. But the actual design work and the production of the clothes, that's all outsourced.
Yeah. And the sales, that happens through independent retail stores. So to you, the customer looking at the tag, it just looks like GANT, one company doing it all. But behind the scenes, there's no single GANT company in that traditional sense. It's this group of independent firms, all coordinated by Pyramid Sportswear. That's what some researchers call an imaginary organization, or like you said, a hollow organization. Pyramid Sportswear is the core, the conductor.
Wow. So GANT is less a factory owner and more, like an orchestra conductor pulling together specialists without owning all the instruments. That really clarifies it. Okay, so that's hollow. Then there's the virtual organization. Our source defines this as basically having little or no physical office space. Employees, managers, they work remotely, often from home, connected purely by IT.
Right. And the classic example here, I think, is Amazon. When you buy something on their site, often that order just gets routed straight to a supplier, and they ship the goods directly to you. It's all knit together by these sophisticated IT systems, emails, video calls, but also things like intranets for internal stuff and extranets to connect securely with partners. It creates this seamless impression of one giant, smooth-running machine, even though it's actually a massive network.
And a slightly different type. Think about Apple and all those app developers. That feels like a collaborative network, right?
Absolutely. Perfect example. Companies like Apple depend hugely on independent programmers creating apps for their iPhones, their iPads. Now, these developers are independent, but they absolutely rely on Apple sharing key technical info about the operating systems. And through things like Apple's big developer conferences, they really foster this sense of being part of the Apple family. It's a powerful ecosystem built on mutual reliance.
Okay, so we see these structures, these GANTs, Amazons, Apples. They offer huge advantages: efficiency, specialization, agility. But what's the catch? Because, like you said, the big hurdle for that core company must be managing performance when you don't actually own the partners. That sounds tricky.
It is. It's absolutely the central challenge, the paradox we touched on. Because that core company, legally, They usually have no direct right to just walk in and manage these external partners like they would their own employees. So everything about performance management, it has to be explicitly spelled out and agreed upon in the business terms, in the contract, right from the start.
So how do they do that? How is performance managed, or at least how do they try to manage it in these setups? What goes into those contracts, those service level agreements, the SLAs?
Yeah, SLAs are fundamental. Our source says they typically specify, what activities are expected, minimum quality levels, obviously the price. But they often go way beyond that. They might lay out detailed reporting requirements. So the partner is obligated to report back using specific agreed-upon metrics. Things like percentage of late deliveries, maybe number of customer complaints, and sometimes there are even penalties, like actual fines, if they repeatedly fail to hit those standards. It's about building accountability into the agreement itself.
That's quite different from a traditional company, isn't it? Where planning is all about internal budgets, detailed cost tracking for every department. But if you only focus on the price from the partner, do you risk losing sight of other things? Like how efficient they are internally, or even, say, ethical sourcing?
That's a really important question. And yes, while the core company is mainly interested in the price, the partner charge is not necessarily their detailed internal costs. The focus shifts. It shifts heavily towards making sure the supplier has the capacity and the flexibility to actually meet the demand on time, even if nobody knows exactly what that demand will be at the start of the year. So less about their internal books, more about their operational readiness for your needs.
And control, then. It sounds like the core company puts a lot of weight on the non-financial side of things with partners. What kind of areas are we talking about?
Oh, definitely. This is where they really have to pay attention. Beyond price, they're looking hard at the quality of the goods or services, delivery performance, customer service levels, and crucially, ethical behavior. This is a big one. Our source gives a pretty stark example. Several big multinationals have had their reputations seriously damaged because partners, maybe in developing countries, were found using child labor or running sweatshop type operations.
Oh, yeah.
It shows how a partner's unethical actions can directly harm the reputation of the entire network, the whole brand. It's a massive business risk.
Right. So the SLAs, they have to cover ethics too, specifying standards, maybe demanding compliance with the core company's code of ethics. And partners have to expect reporting requirements on this, maybe even inspections or audits, sort of extending the core's oversight without actual ownership.
Exactly that. And then you have the challenge with, say, freelancers or remote employees.
Yeah.
Traditional control methods like clocking in, direct supervision, they just don't work the same way. You can't see if they're at their desk.
Yeah, that's a tough one. If you can't physically see them or clock them in, how do you manage productivity? What's the secret sauce there?
Well, one approach is paying based on results. So maybe your pay is tied to the number of customer queries you handle, something measurable. But beyond metrics, trust becomes incredibly important. That and what some call cultural controls, which basically means trying to hire people who are naturally self-motivated, who buy into the company's goals, and who don't need constant hand-holding. It's about finding the right fit and building that shared culture.
And I suppose IT can play a role too. System logs showing when people log in and out, though I guess it doesn't guarantee they're actually working.
Right. It tells you they're connected, but not much more about productivity. It's a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole solution.
So, okay, even with these carefully written SLAs, high-tech monitoring, things can still go wrong. Problems crop up. And it's interesting how specific these disagreements can get, isn't it? Or how fast they can escalate.
Oh, absolutely. Our source mentions disagreements over the value of calculated metrics. There was an example, Callisto Retail, where they argued with a wholesaler about how many days' worth of inventory was actually being held.
Right.
Tiny details can become big fights.
Right.
And then there's the classic problem, figuring out who's actually responsible when a customer is unhappy. If multiple partners are involved in delivering a service or product, pointing the finger can get complicated.
Yeah, the blame game. And what about confidentiality? You're sharing potentially sensitive stuff, production techniques, customer lists. That seems like a huge risk with external partners.
It really is. Strong procedures, secure IT systems, clear contractual clauses about confidentiality, they're all essential to manage that risk. And another big issue that comes up is motivation. If everyone works directly for you in-house, you have various ways to motivate them. Bonus schemes, career paths. But motivating an entirely separate company, an external partner, That can be tougher. They have their own priorities, their own bottom line.
So it really boils down to making sure everyone's pulling in the same direction, that all the partners somehow share the same goals and see how their piece fits into the bigger picture. Maybe using things like profit sharing arrangements or bonuses tied to the overall success to align everyone's interests.
Precisely. It's about making sure that what's good for the core company is also clearly good for the partner. Aligning those incentives is key.
It feels like in all of this, information systems, IT, they aren't just helpful, they're almost foundational. The unsung hero making these complex structures actually feasible?
I'd say that's absolutely right. Often, the core organization will invest significantly in developing a single, integrated IT system, and then they require all their partners to use it. Think of it like the central nervous system for this whole distributed network. And the benefits are huge. It can help smooth over many of those performance management issues we talked about. It aids monitoring, ensures everyone is working off the same data, which makes collecting performance info much easier and more reliable. It usually gives the core company more control over data security, too. And overall, it just leads to much smoother communication, better coordination across the board. Honestly, without that strong IT backbone, many of these complex models probably wouldn't even be viable. They'd likely just fall apart.
Okay, so let's recap quickly. Using more business partners, building these complex structures, it offers really compelling advantages: lower costs, deeper specialization, more flexibility. But it definitely comes with its own set of challenges, particularly around managing performance and maintaining control.
Absolutely. That reliance on external partners undeniably brings extra performance management headaches. I think the key takeaway for you, the listener, is that these challenges, they can't be an afterthought. They have to be tackled head on right from the beginning, especially when you're drawing up those contracts and SLAs with partners. It's about embedding trust and accountability right into the relationship structure, which brings up an interesting question to ponder. Thinking about everything we discussed today, how do you think organizations might evolve in the future? How will they continue to balance these huge efficiency gains from complex networks with that constant need for control, for trust, and for keeping everyone aligned in this increasingly interconnected world?
Yeah, something to think about. So the next time you buy something from a big brand or use a slick online service, maybe just pause for a second. Consider if you might be looking at one of these imaginary or hollow organizations in action, a powerful core quietly conducting a whole orchestra of invisible partners behind the scenes. It might just change how you see the businesses shaping our world.